willkommen beim Dream Do Live Podcast, dein Podcast fürs Großträumen und einfach mal machen für Herz, Verstand und Karriere. Mein Name ist Imaya Sabine und heute im Interview freue ich mich sehr, Imaya Sabine begrüßen zu dürfen. Imaya geht bei dem Namen Psychospiritualtherapist und verbindet die Lehren der Psychologie oder der positiven Psychologie mit der Spiritualität und zentriert dabei den Menschen in ihrem Ansatz. Und es geht darum, einfach Mensch sein zu dürfen, im Alltag über sich selber lachen zu dürfen, zu lernen, mit Schmerz umzugehen, zu lernen, das Leben nicht so ernst zu nehmen. Und Imaya hat ihr eigenes Online-Programm, wo sie im Monat so eine Art Abo hat, wie man sich diese Lehren, Mensch sein zu dürfen, Spiritualität einerseits und Psychologie andererseits zu verbinden. Sie sagt zum Beispiel, dass es sehr einfach ist, spirituell und erleuchtet zu sein, wenn man oben auf einem Berg hockt und man nicht in der täglichen Interaktion mit Menschen ist. Jedoch, wenn man in deinem täglichen Alltag ist, dann, oder wenn du in deinem täglichen Alltag bist, dann ist es so, dass ja doch andere Menschen dir vielleicht auf den Nerv gehen, bestimmte Situationen aufkommen, die dich ärgern und die dich dann außer Balance bringen. Aber auch deine eigenen Erwartungen an Dinge, die enttäuscht werden und wie man der Umgang mit dieser Enttäuschung, mit Glück, mit Freude, mit Verzweiflung, mit Schmerzen, auch Herzschmerzen, psychischen Schmerzen, sage ich mal. Und ja, es ist eine wundervolle Folge. Das heißt, hörst dir an, wenn du jetzt gerade dabei bist, ein Unternehmen zu gründen und vor einer schwierigen Phase stehst oder in einer schwierigen Phase gerade bist, oder wenn du gerade generell in deinem Leben in einer schwierigen Phase bist. Wir sprechen darüber, wie du auch deine Tiefphasen für dich nutzen kannst, worum es darum geht und wieso gerade deine Tiefphasen eigentlich ein Blessing sind, wenn man das auf Englisch sagt, also ein Segen sind für dich, um daraus noch stärker rauszukommen, dich besser zu kennen, dich besser kennenzulernen und zu wissen, wer du bist, was du willst und in welche Richtung dein Leben schlagen soll, beziehungsweise in welche Richtung du in deinem Leben gehen möchtest. Deswegen freue ich mich total, Imaya hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Ich wünsche dir viel Spaß bei der Folge. Amen und Namaste, deine Mia.
Hi Imaya, thank you for taking your time today to talk to me about your life, about how you chose your path and the psychospiritualtherapist, what a psychospiritualtherapist does and what the teachings are. And thank you. So I wanted to start with one question. I know you had a path of psychological therapy and also going into the spiritual practice. Maybe you want to share a little bit your story so the audience knows how you came onto this path and what the benefits of psychospiritual therapy are.
Sure, okay. I feel my story is just like everyone else's story. Maybe in certain details it varies, or it might sound a bit more extreme than what some people experience, but in the end, those are just arbitrary differences. It's kind of the human story. We come here, we don't really know what the fuck is going on, and we try and figure it out, and it hurts. It hurts. And some of us, myself included, are so sensitive to that truth. We're so sensitive, like something doesn't feel right. And so at a certain point, I did go into the traditional psychotherapy, Western medicine route, only because at that point there was no other option. I was so, deep down the rabbit hole of pain, and I was a threat to my own life and everything. At that point, I didn't really have much of a choice.
Okay.
But going down that route, something inside of me, and it took many years for me to articulate that message, that inner knowing, that intuition, which said, you're not going to find it here, because the pain that you feel that something that you can sense is off, I can see it in their eyes too.
Do you think you were born with that pain, or do you?
I think we all.
We're all born with the pain.
Yes, I know we all are. You can't be human without feeling the pain of forgetting that you're more than human.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and so I left everything behind at a pretty young age, and I traveled all around the world in spiritual and conscious and new age communities, if you will, and I kind of found out the same thing after like 10 years, like, wow, there's a lot of interesting stuff here, yet still I feel something is missing. And in the end, it took me a 10-month dark night of the soul, which in one sense awakened me to the reality of psychology and spirituality not being separate. Being human and being divine, being God, are not separate. And it was the merging of these two different perspectives, of these two seemingly different awarenesses, that changed everything. And it's still an ongoing discovery to this day of what that means and what the implications are. But since that moment, there's been no going back for me to that amount of suffering, you know? And now anything that comes up, I know in what framework to put it for it to dissolve on its own.
Wow, that's very inspiring, very deep. So about the framework, can you explain that a little bit more better? Like, what are the main points about psychospiritual therapy? Yes, like for people who never heard of it, and for people who might only be in psychotherapy and not have like the touch to the spiritual world yet, or a little bit. Maybe you can explain like the basic framework of it and how it helped you out of this place of darkness and pain.
I can't really say that it was this framework that got me out of the darkness. It was more like I awoke out of the darkness and this is what I saw. Wow. This is what I understood from that moment forward. Like, okay, I've been looking for it in one direction and I couldn't find it. I've been looking for it in that direction and I couldn't really find it. And once I awoke to a different kind of awareness, what I saw was, oh, the two are not separate. So when you try and separate them, it's like separating the fingers of your hand, you know? They work together. If you wouldn't have a thumb, you wouldn't be a fully functioning human. And it's the same with our psyche, with our perception, with our awareness. So psychology brings us to a certain point, if you will. Let's say from and you know, this is just words and perspective. It's just something that helps us grasp what is going on. But to speak about it in this way, I have to separate the concepts, but only in words. The two are not separate. So psychology works from the bottom up. Spirituality, and that's why at a certain point psychology lifts you from the bottom up, and that's why at a certain point you reach a limit. And most people think, okay, that's where I'm done. But they find that deep down, they still don't feel that level of joy, of fulfillment, of relaxation, of happiness that is ongoing. Spirituality, on the other hand, it to us, it is so hard to grasp because it tends to speak about the universal, the spiritual, the divine perspective without including the human perspective. So it's just for reference point, it's so high. And then as humans, we try and jump from here to there, from the very bottom to the very top. And then we wonder why we feel we can't get it, why we feel we can't grasp it. It's all these beautiful concepts. Everything is love, for example. Yeah. And it's like, oh, yeah, that sounds awesome. Okay, now what? How do I practice this in my daily life? Yeah. Because my neighbor is pissing me off.
Yeah, that's the real world. Your neighbor is pissing you off. Your colleague is like, oh, always late. And you do the late hours. And and then you're like, oh, I'm so divine. I'm pure light and love. And I'm so zen. And then in your deep inside, you are like,
boiling and angry, and you're like, oh no, I need to embrace it, instead of letting you off the hook and saying, fuck it, I'm angry, so what?
And so that point where you said, well, I need to embrace it and love everything, it's not that that's not true.
Yes, it's true.
But you might have to go first through a period of, I'm fucking pissed. So anyway, what psychospiritual means is it fully acknowledges completely where you are right now. It doesn't imply that you have to start off on like, I have to forgive people, I have to practice this. And it's like, this is where you are. Your entire life, especially your annoying partner or this annoying person or that annoying, that is your spiritual practice.
Yes.
And at the same time, your psychological practice. So it also overcomes this limitation that psychology alone has, because psychology is a system that is born out of the very issue which is creating our issues, because our core issue is that we forget our divine nature. So if you're applying a system like psychology which does not acknowledge our divine nature, there is a glass ceiling. And now that's why we're now entering a time where we're going to find out sooner rather than later, and many of us already have, like, psychology is very needed. A lot of spiritual people need to go back a little bit and go to psychology. And if you've been into psychology for a while, you're going to find like, oh, without the spirituality component, I'll never find that place of true peace.
Yeah. That's true. Sometimes I feel like all the spiritual people are so up in the earth, searching for sense, where sometimes it's just better to acknowledge the human imperfection.
Yes. And you have to.
Yeah.
But it's not the end.
It's not the end. No, of course not. I find it very interesting that you came to a point where you realized that, and I would like to, you might want to share something, like some technique where when you're like in the middle of it, the car is already over the cliff and you're losing your temper. How do you bounce back? Because sometimes this cliff seems to be so big that this shock is like going on for days and weeks, and you keep on repeating shit, the shitty story you tell yourself, and of course, okay, that's just my perception, I might change that, that's just my feelings, but still, it's inside of you, and although there's a wisdom telling you, I need to change, I need to know, but I cannot. It's just so sucking my energy, and I have this tense feeling in my belly or whatever it is. Do you want to share like something? Yeah, thank you.
Definitely. And I would love to share it from two different angles. One more for like what I think you're referring to, more like the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And then another one, which is what I'll begin with, which is if you're really, really, really deep into suffering and also acutely aware of your suffering, something we, usually call either depression, dark night of the soul, whatever it is, if you're really in one of those dark places. So those dark places are, in a way, and I know it's going to sound very counterintuitive, is one of the best places you can find yourself. Because when you are down on your knees, it is much easier to surrender. Because you've been struggling, you've been fighting for so long. At a certain point, you reach a point where you would do anything for truth. And before that time, which is why I personally believe, well, there's two ways. Like when you talk about the day-to-day stuff, that's a daily practice, daily. Dark night of the soul is different, or like a deep, dark depression. It's where you're saying, okay, the suffering has become so much, and the saying, like, the truth sets you free, but first it'll piss you off. At that point, you're in so much pain, nothing can piss you off further. Because that's like akin to saying the suffering, You're already in so much pain, nothing can add more to it. So you're like, okay, fine, give me the truth. And the truth is literally what liberates you, is you see, looking back, how the whole suffering thing was created by you. So when I was in my dark night of the soul, this was about 2 years ago, without any idea why, I was just guided to, I started praying for forgiveness. I had never prayed before. I didn't believe in like a God out there. I had no idea what forgiveness meant. I mean, I thought I did. We all think, okay, forgiveness means someone did something wrong, and now you're like, oh yeah, I forgive you. That's not forgiveness. So I prayed for forgiveness. There was no way out for me.
Sorry, just a second. So forgiveness, in the concept we live it, it's not like that. So how is it?
I'm about to tell you. Thanks for asking. Yeah, no, what happened, one day, I totally saw that this person that I had such an issue with, and that for 10 months I was in a lot of suffering. I barely left my house. I saw literally there was nothing to forgive. I saw that my whole pain was created through story upon story upon story upon story upon story upon story upon, like everything all of a sudden made sense. So this is why I always tell people about praying for forgiveness as a first tool, which most people will skip. Because they're like, well, praying doesn't make sense, forgiveness doesn't make sense.
I'm the victim, right?
Of course. Yes. Oh, yes. This is a big one, why forgiveness is so important, because when we're suffering, per definition, it means that you're telling yourself a story of victimhood. Yes. Forgiveness corrects this whole thing. All of a sudden you see that no one is victimizing you but your own attitude, but your own mind, but your own stories, but your own belief systems. It corrects this without doing any work. And like I said, it lasted 10 months. It was not like forgiveness came the first day. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are like, well, I prayed and it didn't work. Yes, it is working. But you, at the same time, are working on being in your suffering for long enough for you to finally open up. Because forgiveness was not something that I could do with my mind. It had to come to me. So this is why a lot of teachers these days, they'll try and warn you, like, don't do premature forgiveness. But you cannot do premature forgiveness, because forgiveness, it's like love. It's like you don't just in a moment say, okay, I'm going to love you. It's like an authentic feeling that you cannot replicate.
So you say in your prayer, I forgive you? Or
no, I don't even know. I don't think I even had words for it, because like I said, I had no clue why this was happening. Simply on the inside, I was crying out for forgiveness. Only in hindsight, I understood why I was praying for forgiveness, and how everything happened the way it did. I had no prior context for what that kind of forgiveness was. So no, I don't have a prayer in terms of words, like here, copy, paste, and use this. Because prayer is not speaking to a deity outside of yourself. Prayer is you aligning yourself with what your heart knows to be true. And so you're just asking, like, and it doesn't matter which words you use at all, because it is your emotions, your feeling that is communicating with your true self. And that's really all there is to it.
Wow. So it's like something inside of you. It's not even words. It's something you...
If there had been any words, it was probably just like, oh God, what the heck is going on? What the fuck? Okay, forgiveness or something. It couldn't have been more than that, because like I said, I had no clue what I was doing. It was really just I was desperate, and desperation is a really good state to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it will make you reach out to something you've never, ever, 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 ever opened yourself up to before.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were also asking, like, maybe something more practical for day-to-day life, because when you're stuck in traffic.
One thing I noticed is just I'm trying to grasp this forgiveness thing.
You can't.
It's a big thing. I
Yes.
mean, we're all stuck in our ego.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's quite, this ego thing tells you, oh, you're the strongest. Who are you going to forgive? They should forgive you.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be forgiving them instead of you asking for forgiveness.
This is also the thing with forgiveness. Once true forgiveness has happened to you, and this is the only way I can say it, there is not even a concept of they need to forgive me, I need to forgive them, I need to forgive myself, they need to forgive me. Forgiveness, just like love, it radiates out to every single direction. Yeah. So when I was in this situation, I wasn't even aware that I needed to forgive him, that I wanted him to forgive me, that I needed to forgive myself. Like, forgiveness is just that. It's forgiveness and it's done. The stories are done.
It's like letting go. Is it a bit like letting go?
You don't even need to let go anymore.
Yeah.
No.
You don't hold on anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No, because all the stories that you had before, you see the truth of what really happened. You simply see what happened and you see it in such a bigger perspective that the stories don't exist anymore. And the things that did happen, you just simply see it in a different light. So you don't want to let go because what happened was actually beautiful. Even if there was, if you experienced prior to that a ton of pain, now you can see like, oh, the pain wasn't actually what came out of the experience. The pain came from my interpretation only of the experience.
That's always the case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are sometimes our greatest enemy with our perception.
Always.
Always, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know it from myself. Yeah. Well, okay. So this is the big dark side, the light in the dark, actually. Yeah. So let's jump to the daily stuck in traffic.
The stuck in. I love the stuck in traffic one because I used to have big road rage and traffic for me is such an interesting ordeal, especially here in Bali because I like to drive fast. I'm like really efficient and then there's like traffic and weird stuff going on. I always used to be like, God damn it, and this and that person is an idiot and that person is an idiot. And you know what? I still have moments and sometimes even days like that. But now it's because the contrast is so big. I realize like, well, it cannot be the traffic. It is impossible for the traffic to cause me this feeling. Why? Because on days where I feel good, I experience the most insane traffic stuff and it doesn't even get to me. I smile, I laugh, someone almost drives into me or I almost drive into someone else because, they all of a sudden they jump onto the street, the pedestrians. Yeah. And
especially in Bali.
Especially, in Amsterdam too, tourists. When I'm in a bad mood, I go like, what the fuck, and this and oh. But when I'm in a great mood, what I see is just like, oops, oh, ha, like that stuff. So this tells us something. This tells us it's not the outside world that is causing us to feel anything. It is our state prior to anything that happens that causes us to react a certain way. And every time we react, we have an opportunity actually to go within and to be like, is this how I want to feel? Is this how I want to react? And we can go deeper and deeper and deeper.
That's this 1 second rule. Yeah.
And so there are tons of practical processes that we can do. For me, just kind of like a general rule for life is to pay attention, to know that nothing outside of me can cause me to feel a certain way. So anything that happens, I use this for self-reflection. I use this for something we call inquiry. If you question your mind, your thoughts enough, questioning your thoughts is like holding up a mirror.
Yeah.
And you see yourself. And the thought sees itself. And it becomes like, oh, hold on. And the more you practice inquiry, the more you open your mind, it's really not a difficult process. It really, really, really isn't once you kind of get the hang of it and once you want it. Because you can also stay stuck in a state of, no, I prefer to keep blaming my rules. But I think that people only do this because they don't know that it's actually very easy to free yourself, to free your mind. It is so much easier than we think. But we're going to move into a different time period right now, the age of Aquarius, where we're all becoming so much more aware that freedom is actually really easy. We've just been holding on to pain, to suffering, to our thoughts, to our beliefs, because we didn't know there was another way. And those of us that did know there was another way have been looking to spiritual gurus for so long, and then projecting onto them, just like we do in church, projecting onto what are they called, like the priests, that they are special. They hold keys to liberation, to freedom. Some people call it enlightenment or whatever. That these people are special and they can do it, but we cannot. If you're really honest with yourself, you will find this thought in you. And it's simply not true. It's just one of the infinite thoughts that we've never questioned, that we've never looked at. And why do we know it's not true? Because it creates us to feel pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. So then it can't be true. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. So we are able to be our own mirror, but we also want to look in this mirror with love, right?
Yes and no. I mean, can you tell from saying it the way that you do that this sounds a little bit vague and probably hard to do? If you have trouble loving yourself, if you have trouble looking at the world with love, then telling yourself, I need to look at myself with love.
So how do you look in the mirror without saying, okay, I disguise this person that I see, I disguise my thoughts? You know, you can reflect on yourself, but again, your perception will tint the filter you're looking through. So if you look through this filter with self-hatred, won't it get even worse? Then,
well, my philosophy is that rather than wanting to jump to what is real, rather than wanting to jump to self-love, rather than wanting to jump to positivity, and I use these words kind of interchangeably, actually use your filter. Use your filter that hates yourself. And this you will see everywhere in the world. When you open your eyes and you go about your day, you get triggered all day long, if you're very honest with yourself. Yeah. Every single trigger is your guru. Every single trigger is a key to your liberation. You don't have to try and love yourself, because love is what you is. I sound very ghetto right now, like I'm doing a rap song. Love is what you are. It's your natural state. We don't have to do anything. Yeah. It becomes very tricky. This is, I think, where a lot of practices and teachings and whatever goes a little bit wrong. You can use everything that doesn't feel right to find out the truth behind it. It's like knocking on a door and seeing what's behind it, instead of trying to interject something positive on top of something negative. It's much harder work. It won't last very long. Speaking from personal experience, this is why so many people right now are warning you for spiritual bypass, which is totally true. You need to look at everything that is causing you pain and suffering, and on the other side of that, you will find truth. That is all.
So you say you just be real with yourself. Or so if you get triggered in traffic and you're so sometimes I can be so full of hate, and I'm like, whoa, where's that coming from? I mean, I'm just driving a car and well, maybe whatsoever, and then not judging yourself. So just observing what is, maybe without judgment. Maybe is that more accurate?
Sure, but the first step would be to stop judging your judgment, because this is what a lot of people think, and then I write a lot about judgment, and then people assume that what I'm saying is that we shouldn't judge. What I'm actually saying is judgment is you hurting yourself, but that doesn't mean that you can stop judging one moment to the next. No. You can't even stop you from judging yourself. No. So again,
that's the hardest thing, I think.
Yeah.
Stop judging you from judging yourself.
And the moment you stop judging yourself, you'll stop judging everything else, because literally that is one and the same. I cannot stress that enough. okay, you said how to do this. So you start where you are. So if you are judging yourself, you're judging the traffic, you allow yourself the judgment. And then when you have the time and the capacity, you sit with those feelings. You sit, and then you find the thoughts behind the feelings. And then you find the belief systems behind the feelings and the definitions. Examples might be, I shouldn't be suffering like this. Everyone in traffic needs to behave differently. Is that can you mention one thought that you have during traffic that makes you, aggressive or?
Yeah, I have a lot of them. Like, that idiot, why does he want to go left when I need to go left now and that?
Yeah. So this is one of the most classic ways that we make ourselves suffer, is that we're trying to oppose reality. We're saying, you know what, if the sky was purple, then my life would be great. How do you think that's going to work out?
Well, it's sometimes purple when there's sundown.
I love you. Okay, let's... Wait, is there ever a color that's... That was brilliant. Okay, but let's say during the day, particularly when the sky is blue, you insist that it has to be purple. How do you feel?
I hate it when things are not turning out my way.
Yes.
There's a lot of resistance,
Exactly.
And you know that you cannot go there. And instead of accepting it and saying, okay, well, it's nice and blue. And blue is also a nice color. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually the nicer feeling I get from it.
Yeah. So mainly the things that I do is, you could call me a researcher or a scientist or a spiritual teacher, all just different kinds of names. What I like to do is I like to pay a lot of attention. Okay, how does life work? What are the things that, this is how we end our suffering, by paying attention. But that sounds vague, right? So what do we pay attention to? Well, literally everything becomes your spiritual teacher when you pay attention. You don't have to pay anyone. You don't have to do anything. Everything is teaching you. The traffic is now your biggest teacher.
I got over it. Living in Bali.
But it really does help to kind of have an idea of what you're trying to learn. So if you go to school, and no one is telling you what you're trying to learn, and it's all just one big jumble, and there's no classes and no purpose to the whole thing, then it doesn't really make sense, right? No. Well, I look at life the same way. It's kind of like a curriculum. We're all pretty much, in terms of consciousness, little babies trying to learn.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love this picture.
You know why? Because it reminds us of our innocence. We think, we're adults. I'm supposed to have figured this out by now. What, you're an adult because you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old? No. In consciousness, if you haven't figured a few things out, you're still like a baby trying to walk. And that's a loving thing to say. If you look at yourself like a baby trying to figure out things, then you have much more compassion for yourself and for others.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is one of the many tricks that I do. Whenever people piss me off, I remind myself, okay, we're all just learning. Whether it's traffic, we're all just learning how to love. If people do stupid, hurtful things, I remind myself we're all trying to learn how to love.
Yeah.
Okay, but the basis of what I do is I live my life and I pay attention this hurts. This is causing me suffering. And if you pay attention, there is no doubt about it. You're like, okay, I curse in traffic. Oh, that doesn't feel nice. I judge people. It simply doesn't feel nice. So you don't try and change anything yet. You certainly don't judge yourself for making yourself suffer. Why? Because you're a baby trying to learn how to walk. Would you judge a baby for trying to learn how to walk? No, that's silly. So, and if you will, even I definitely recommend it, write things down. Just start investigating. Start becoming very curious. Curiosity opens your mind. So see it as a game. Okay, my life is a game. How does this game work? What makes me hurt and what doesn't hurt? And you start paying attention mostly to your inner world. Because at a certain point you have to, one of the basic rules is, which I've observed after, but don't believe me, you know, like find it out for yourself. And so how I found out that nothing is causing me suffering is, one of the many examples is, there's one situation, I curse this situation and I suffer, and another person is not cursing that situation and they're happy as can be.
Yeah.
So, okay, I write down, nothing is inherently causing suffering. It is our reaction to it or our interpretation or belief. So you start becoming a student of life and what causes suffering and what doesn't.
Life becomes your playground. You know, you kind of grow into this playful thing, and you just discover what feels good for you and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be the same as for your neighbors. That's what I always say. Like, what makes you happy is not the same thing as what makes your neighbor happy or your brother or your sister. It's just your own perception.
Exactly. On a very, 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 because we all have like individual perceptions of what makes us happy and what doesn't. But on a very, very base level, because like I said in the beginning, we have two perspectives, and the universal perspective, the divine perspective, we always need to include it. So on one level, we're all different. On one level, we're all the same. It's true for every human being that if you, let's just give a very easy, if you kill someone, that's going to hurt you. That's not going to feel good. There will not be a person for whom that feels good. You know, and we can extrapolate that to judging, to complaining, to like just certain things. They do work the same for every human being. The details might be different, but the mechanism works the same.
Yeah.
It's like if you stick your hand in the fire,
It will hurt.
unless you have some sort of disease where you don't feel that, but then what will happen, your body will still reflect to you that that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I also feel like on a spiritual level, like not only the physical level, but also the spiritual level, with everybody telling the same thing, there must be some kind of oneness truth that is beneath us, where we're all connecting to this kind of source. That's a little bit spiritual woo-woo, but I really like this perspective because all of us crave love. And all of us are love at the same time, you know, and all of those songs written for love and for lost love and for gained love, and
if you listen with ears to hear, every spiritual teaching with some weight to it is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's just translated in different languages, in different time, in different zeitgeist, through different persons.
Yeah.
And, each single one points towards the same thing, and we're just stumbling over details or something like, oh, that's not true. And like, no, then your mind isn't open enough. If your mind is open enough, you see that they're all true from a different angle.
Yeah.
And those angles actually really help you, because incorporating different perspectives opens your mind further and further, and the further your mind opens, the further your heart opens, and that's what we typically call love.
Yeah.
Basically an open mind, to be honest. There's nothing really more to it.
Today I composed an Instagram post saying, from different perspective, you are also living a completely different life.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I would like to ask one last question. So in the end, I always ask, what are your 3 major life learnings you would like to share? I mean, you have had an amazing journey and we haven't heard all of it yet. Maybe we have another interview sometime. But what are your 3 things you took away so far and you're very grateful for it, and maybe somebody finds it inspiring for themselves?
Sure. I haven't made a list of 3, so I'm just gonna communicate the first 3 that come up. The first one would be to really completely trust where you are in this moment, because we're stuck in this perpetual feeling that we're not doing it right. Whether we're in psychology or in science or in religion or in spirituality, we're always feeling like our happiness and our self-love can't come unless we do one more thing. And that is the biggest illusion, really. Like, really, in this moment, you are as perfect as you need to be. You have all the information that you need to have for where you are on your journey. And that acceptance of where you are, who you are right now, right here, is going to create the biggest shift without you trying to create the biggest shift, you know? It sounds counterintuitive unless you get the hang of it. So even if you're pissed off or anything, just really trust that in a moment. It really takes out a lot of the resistance. And only from that place of lesser resistance can we really move forward.
Wow, that is huge.
And the second would be to really stop worrying so much about whether you're doing it right or not, and what your purpose is, and what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Because your life purpose really is simply just to be yourself. And there is this idea of living your full potential and your higher purpose and all of that, which there is a truth to it, but you can't get to that by trying to figure out what it is. You can only, same as what I discussed before, continuously find everything that triggers you, find all your negative beliefs, find everything that instills fear in you, because those are the only thing that will make you behave in a way that is not who you truly are. So who you truly are is not something you become or something you aspire to or something that becomes better. It's actually by taking away things that you are not.
Wow.
So it's kind of, the process is kind of reversed to what a lot of people think it is. Ascension, is not, it also doesn't really work in the way we think it does. It's not about becoming something more or higher. It's realizing, it's almost like a coming down, a realizing of what you've already been the whole time.
Yes.
So it's kind of a trippy one, a mindfuck.
No, but that is so true, because the door to your purpose is actually through self-discovery. So you cannot define your purpose without knowing yourself. You have to get to know yourself and find pleasure in this embodiment that you are at the moment, and embody it with your full heart, because that will guide you to happiness and pleasure in the person you are and in the being you are. And everything else, even if you want to be a princess, but you are not born to be a princess. Let's put it like this, because all girls want to be princesses. You know how that is.
I think I wanted to be a witch.
Suits you. I wanted to be a princess. Or maybe Pocahontas. No, but... yeah, and then you come to terms of finding out, okay, I'm maybe not a princess, I'm a witch. Or maybe I'm not a witch, I'm actually a princess, and you seem like you're unhappy with being this princess or witch or whatever, instead of looking into it and saying, oh, well, there's things that resonate with me being a witch, and I can do it my way.
Yes.
And then it resolves in, I don't know, great opportunities for you to show your light, for you to help others, for you to be the person you were supposed to be and the reason why you were born. Wow, that's amazing.
I really loved every single word of how you described that. Yes. We need to trust what we simply feel compelled to do. Like, watch little children. They are living their purpose so fully. And it's the same, I made this reference today, like, how do you know when to pee? How do you know when to eat? How do you know when to sleep? Well, there's little distortions there, right? Because we have some thoughts that make us a little bit, but I think the peeing example, therefore, is the best one. We have very little thoughts about when we should or shouldn't pee. So we're sitting, we're like, oh, I need to pee. That's how we pee. That's when we pee. It's the same with living your entire life. You don't need to figure anything out. You just act from what feels true for you right now. And then the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment, the path doesn't show itself. It shows itself step by step by step. And if you're thinking you're going in that direction, you might end up going in a slightly different direction. If you take step by step, then it wouldn't be a detour, because you wouldn't have your mind set on something 10 years in the future or 10 days in the future. You're just taking it step by step. And that's how you live your purpose. It's like by simply acting on what is inspiring and true for you right now.
Yes. I love this.
And then let's see the third one. Yeah, well, it's very hard for me to go with any other. That pain is a teacher. Pain only ever, and including suffering, they're simply telling us that we're hurting ourselves, that we are going against what we truly are. And so, no one can tell you this and you can understand it, but you can hear about this mechanism and you can start to experiment it for yourself. And then after a while, you find that you truly are all these things that all the beautiful spiritual gurus tell you, that you are love, you are peace, you are this, you are that. But just hearing it isn't enough. So to understand that pain is letting you know you're now going in a direction with your mind that is not true. It is going against truth, and that hurts. Why? Because life wants to preserve itself. It wants to keep on living. So just like when you stick your hand in the fire, it's going to hurt. Why? Because this is an evolutionary mechanism. Life wants to protect your body. It wants to preserve your body. So it needs a mechanism like pain to warn you, don't stick your hand in the fire. Our emotions are the same mechanism. Your emotions react to your mind the way your hand reacts to the fire. If you're in pain, if you're in suffering, there is something that you're believing that isn't true. And you are the only person that can find out for you what you are believing. And contemplation, inquiry, whatever you want to call it, is, for me, it has proven to be the best way. So you cannot figure it out with your mind. Your mind needs to open. So that's why what I call prayer, although it's probably a little bit different definition than most people have of prayer, but simply a willingness, like ask yourself the question, and sure, play around with it, chew around on it, with it. But in the end, leave it and just say to yourself, I just want the truth. I want the truth more than I want this pain. And then within a minute, a day, a year, a lifetime, you will hear inside of you, not coming from the same mind that created the suffering, but from a more open mind, you will receive the answer, you're suffering because you're sticking your hand in the fire. And it's the same with everything else. But you have to ask the question, you have to be willing enough to say, okay, something hurts. Then you have to be willing enough to ask some questions, and then you have to be willing enough to actually receive the answer. It's a choice. It's all a choice.
I think the willingness to receive the answer is, the most difficult part. Is it?
Yes, but it doesn't take a lot of willingness. That's why suffering, why pain is a teacher, because the purpose of pain is to stop pain. So again, you can choose every single day to suffer a little bit, and then if you're lucky enough, maybe go into a dark night of the soul or big depression, because it will make it easier to wake up. Or you can really, really start to understand that you live in a place of chronic pain and suffering, and do you want out or not? That is the only question. That is the only issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. Perfect.
Thanks. Wow, das war eine wirkliche Power-Folge. In den Shownotes verlinke ich dir natürlich allen Content von Imaya, wenn es dich interessiert. Sie hat wundervollen Content über wie man Schmerz verarbeitet, wie man durch den Schmerz zur Liebe kommt, wie Schmerz und Liebe tatsächlich eins sind. Wirklich, falls du gerade in deiner Dark Side of the Soul bist, wie sie das genannt hat, da ist einiges an Content dabei. Ich verlinke dir das alles in den Shownotes. Ich finde es wunderbar, was sie macht, und Ich hoffe, du hast dadurch eine neue Perspektive auf Schmerz und Leiden bekommen und du ziehst daraus wertvolle Erkenntnisse, hinschauen zu wollen, erkennen zu wollen, was dir dieses Leiden, was dir dieser Schmerz sagen möchte, was dir dein Körper sagen möchte, ob du noch auf dem richtigen Pfad bist oder ob du vielleicht leichte Anpassungen machen musst, um dich wieder besser zu fühlen, wo du genau hinschauen solltest. Ich hoffe, falls du gerade in einer schwierigen Phase steckst, dass du das bald für dich transformieren kannst und aus diesem Schmerz gestärkt herauskommst, eine neue Perspektive auf dein Leben hast, eine neue Perspektive auf deine Aufgaben, die vor dir liegen, Mut hast, weiterzugehen, den Mut hast, selbstbewusst zu sein, den Mut hast, aber auch dich kennenlernen zu wollen, vielleicht auch dir gewisse Dinge einzugestehen, die du dir eigentlich gar nicht eingestehen wolltest und weshalb du vielleicht diesen Schmerz gerade oder diese schmerzhafte Phase durchlebst. Und ich hoffe, wir sehen uns nächsten Donnerstag wieder zur gewohnten Uhrzeit. Ich wünsche dir einen wundervollen Tag und falls dir diese Folge gefallen hat, würde ich mich sehr, sehr über eine Bewertung auf iTunes freuen oder wenn du mir auf iTunes oder Spotify folgst, so verpasst du keine weiteren Folgen von mir. Amen und Namaste, deine Mia.